Righto, looks like we are going live. Righto, guys. Quick welcome to everybody across the country. We're live here tonight at Ballymore Stadium in Brisbane. Topic tonight for the older generation of referees in our communities, the over 40s. Welcome to everybody in our room here in Brisbane, of course, and then welcome to everybody across the country as well, wherever you are watching from. Just a little bit of housekeeping, I suppose. Bit nervous, never done one of these webcams before. I know the master, Jamie McGregor, has got a lot of experience, but just using one of the old entertainer strategies here and pretending that everyone in the room here is naked and just going to talk to you guys. But I must admit that, no, please don't do that. I must admit that it's not a pretty sight. Audience also in the room, fits the profile perfectly. I've got a lot of glasses in the room. I've got a full knee construction over this side, or knee replacement.
Yes.
Yeah, a full knee replacement over this side as well. So, good. Without any further ado, let's get going. I must admit that the material tonight is not necessarily technical. There's a little bit of information around where we're all at with our physical capabilities and things like that. A little bit of strategy on-field stuff we'll be discussing as well. With our degenerating ages, etc., and our physicality, there's some stuff here that we're going to talk about with how do we combat those. And then also I've got a couple of our local referees here in Brisbane going to join me to create a little bit of a panel for us to discuss a few, I suppose, pertinent topics around refereeing once we do get into these sort of twilight years of our careers, I suppose, and their involvement within their own communities here in Brisbane, their expectations around games, like appointments, coaching, all of those type of things. So a little bit of a mix here, bit of a shit sandwich to start with as well. There's a couple of, when we're talking about realities and our physical capabilities, etc. It's not necessarily doom and gloom, but I think there needs to be a bit of an understanding of where we are, where we're at, and what needs to be done to make sure that we are keeping ourselves, physically fit and up to a standard of the game that we are expected to officiate at and officiate well. I just want to acknowledge with the information that I do have here tonight, some of this comes from a very, very interesting paper written by Mr. Ron Mansell quite a few years ago, but the information is absolutely brilliant. And while it was written 2008, I believe, still very, very current for all of us. And I will be, with Ron's permission, we'll be making that available to you to follow up. I can imagine that a lot of our brothers and sisters down in New South Wales have probably already seen the paper itself. But I had reading through it, got a lot of information, and I've got a lot of really good strategies, etc. So there is a little bit of that I'm touching on, Ron. So thank you so much for your input here as well. So tonight's session is not in any way a bash-up session. Obviously, we are all still very, very keen on remaining active as on-field referees, and I don't want this to be construed in any way that the message here is you're too old, so therefore you need to move on. What we want to get across tonight in our little discussions is we're getting older, but what can we do to still participate and contribute in a positive way with our within our communities? All right. So I suppose from a physicality perspective, then let's get started. I think we all have to, understand that getting into our 40s now, and a lot of us within the room would, I suppose, appreciate this and start feeling this as well, is that, our physical strength through our muscles, our our cardiovascular systems start to slow down a little bit. So therefore, our lung capacity and our on-field, our running, etc., sort of starts to suffer as well. Our speed sort of backs off a bit, and our agility, of course, so flexibility and all those type of things starts to slow down, or at least suffer slightly. Unfortunately, our vision as well starts to deteriorate. We all get accused at home of our hearing starting to fail, and while we as referees understand that hearing is not necessarily, we're not wanting to hear, but we're selecting what we are hearing. So, but, obviously for us as we go along, that can become an issue. But I suppose one of the biggest issues for us is when we put all of those physical aspects together, we start suffering with, or our decision making, or our ability to make decisions on the run and at speed also start to slow down. Okay, so our ability to pick on the first infringement, or now we're picking up the second infringement, or we're starting to referee away from the breakdown, we're opening up that distance, etc., and there's a lack of connection between our first what's happening at the breakdown compared to where we are, etc. Okay, so in a nutshell, and this is the shit sandwich part of it, we're all getting slower, unfortunately. We're getting weaker. We're getting fatter. Some giggles in the room. We're getting fatter. Our aerobic capacity, of course, is starting to suffer. We can't see or hear as well as we used to. And obviously, that processing of information is not done as quickly as we would like, or where it used to be. So I suppose the hardest thing for us is the older we get, the better we were, and acknowledging that, I'm not quite as capable of that higher level game as where I used to be, or where I'd like to be. And therefore, I'm going to start either riding that slippery pole down to the bottom end. Hopefully that's not the case. But we do, I suppose, need to understand that, that may well be the case. However, good news is, of course, that all of those different, weaknesses that we start to suffer as we do get older, they can be worked upon. They can be improved, or if not slowed down, through obviously focused training. And what we have to understand, of course, is that the training that we then move into has to reflect our own capabilities and what we can, what we can't do, etc. Right? Because there's no point any of us thinking that the type of training that I did as a teenager, 20-year-old, that worked for me back then, it should work for me now. Very much a disconnect there. All right. So I suppose, science has proven, and studies that have been done, and I'm sure that a lot of us in the room have had experience firsthand that we now have this quite a decent focus on the benefits of strength training. Now, obviously, we're not talking about lifting enormous amounts of weight or heavy weights, but we're talking about, building strength through low weights, high repetition, making sure that those muscles are still working, et cetera, et cetera. So, something that we should all be considering is, what kind of strength exercise routine do we do? If not, how can we incorporate that into our daily lives? Whether that might be, our own body weight exercise routines through sit-ups, push-ups, chin-ups, whatever it might be, if we're capable of that. But otherwise, what are the adaptations that we might need to make sure that we're doing the best possible for ourselves? Of course, with our lung capacities and our aerobic fitness, well, we're not all going to be able to get out there and run interval training with younger squad members, or even run long distances on roads or on the grass or whatever it might be. So how do we build up? Well, what are the kind of exercises we might be able to do as an alternative to running? And of course, everything involved, or everything that doesn't involve, I should say, impact on road, hard surfaces, squash courts, or whatever it might be, can only benefit. Cycling, running, swimming, surfing, stand-up paddle, whatever it might be. There's so many alternatives out there for us nowadays that we can be using to our benefit as well. With our speed and agility, it's an unfortunate reality. I feel it, when I go training here with our Premier squad here in Brisbane. Not that I'm doing it for any reason other than just keeping them honest, I suppose. But, while I think I'm still pretty fast, I'm the last to finish on those speed drills. And, it hurts a lot. But, it's the strength training, of course, as we get older, and I've got a couple of doctors here in the room who could prove me wrong or whatever, but, as we get older, the different type of muscles that we do have, type 1, type 2, type 1 being the fast twitch fibers, etc., they start to break down, etc. So with some strength training, at least we can, while we're not going to lose, hopefully not losing as much fiber, we are strengthening the fibers that we do have to retain speed and potentially gain a few extra yards of pace as well. The agility one, of course, is so important for us as we do get older, is making sure that we do what we can to remain supple. There is, our flexibility exercises, whether we're rolling, all of those type of activities available. Build into our daily routine, our weekly routine, some kind of exercise program or opportunity to do those things, at your own time, etc. Pre-game, obviously, some kind of warm-up, post-game or post-training session, just as important to have a routine that we are cooling down and we're not going from exercising into a static state. A static state, and then, of course, inviting soft tissue injuries, after we finish the game or after we finish training. Okay. Can't do much about your hearing, or your listening, or your hearing or your vision. That's obviously something we need to work on. Decision making. Look, obviously with each game, that retains a certain level, but if we're only getting that decision making sort of process during game time, what else can we be doing on the side? There's a whole lot of things available to us now with Luminosity and other kind of apps online that that test us with our brain function, puzzles, and all that type of stuff. Jigsaw puzzles, maybe for the really old referees. But there's a whole lot there that we could be exploring, as an option of helping us with that decision making. Righto. I suppose one thing we do need to understand or remember with our refereeing as we do get older is there's not really that much of an expectation of appointment officers or refereeing associations, whatever it is. As we get older, there aren't any really expectations on us to be hitting fitness targets and being super fit and all that type of stuff. So, therefore, it's got to be a self-driven, I suppose, desire to be at your physical best, whatever level that might be, so that you are feeling confident, you're feeling strong enough, you're feeling fit enough to get through the appointments that you do get. On the flip side of that, of course, is that if there's no expectation upon us to reach fitness targets, well, to be pushed up into higher games, well, there's no real kind of expectation that we can have on our appointment officers or competitions to be put in those games where people are clearly of a higher level of either fitness, ability, experience, and all of those things. Righto. There's a hell of a lot more that we could discuss around that picture. I don't want to drag it out too long, and I'm pretty sure you've already probably heard enough from me. So what I'd like to do now is bring to the floor a couple of our local referees from here in Brisbane, a couple of really old bastards, so that we can chew the fat with these guys and get a little bit of insight from them as well, and we'll take it from there. So if I could just grab you two gentlemen up onto the floor. I'll take a step to the side. Here we go. All righty, perfect. So here tonight with me, I've got to my my left here, the first closest to me is Mr.
Michael Ogle.
Michael Ogle. Okay, and we're just watching. Someone's got watching highlights from the weekend. Bored shitless already. The short attention span for an old bugger. Okay, righto. So Mickey Ogle, tell us a little bit about yourself, mate.
Well, I started playing rugby in '79, grade 12. Played up till the early '90s. I then got involved with junior coaching from '79 through to 2010, and I started refereeing in 2002. Mainly because of junior coaching, I had to know the laws, plus the juniors needed to be coached. So I started doing some refereeing, mainly juniors in 2002, and I'm still refereeing, so not this much this year due to injury.
We'll talk about that in a minute. Good man. And
I'm
Dan Sheehan.
Yes, I'm Dan Sheehan. So I grew up in Toowoomba, and I played a lot of junior rugby up there from under sixes right through the schoolboys, and then Colts, and then seniors. Had a break, went overseas, came back and played rugby in Toowoomba and then Brisbane. And I think I just got to a point where I'd had enough of rugby, had enough of the injuries, and just thought I want to get back to the game, but I didn't have time to coach. So I thought, I always had a good rapport with the referees up in Toowoomba, and I thought, this is something that I think I can do, and I can contribute in a positive way. So when I was 31, I joined the association here, and so I'm now 44. So I've been refereeing for about 13 years.
Right. So Dan only just meets the criteria here, but he's a pretty good example of a 40-ish year old referee. So 44?
44.
And Mickey, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm 57.
Nice. Okay. All righty. Good stuff. Righto. So I've just got a few questions here. I'm going to fire away at these fine fellows. And related back to what I was just talking about before, Dan, I'm going to start with you. How do you find the, I call it the aging process, but how does that sort of work into your game on the weekend? And, what are the strategies that you might put into place in comparison to when, you started when you were 31, or, for some of our referees who might have been, might be in their 20s now? Does anything change for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So things that I've noticed have been probably 4 points. One around set piece. I'm just not as quick getting away from set pieces. I'm certainly not as agile pit turning from rucks and mauls, that sort of thing. I tend to fatigue, as the game goes on, or the, your mental capacity, you can just feel it not as sharp as what it used to be. And I suppose the fourth thing is when you've got sustained aerobic activity, running length of the field, or you've got intercept tries, you just don't recover as well for the next bit. So you're just sort of just a bit short of breath, or you're just a bit under the pump, as it were. So you're just trying to play catch up. And I suppose it's now about how do I grab those moments where I can get back to a comfort level, so that I'm in a good position to manage the game.
So what does that look like?
So it used to look like when I was playing, show how fast, show how fit you are, and get to rucks and balls or phases of play really quickly. So you're there to make a decision and demonstrate, I suppose, to the teams, the coaches, everyone watching you that, you're on top of this.
Yeah.
But now it's not about that. It's about, I suppose, importantly, having the same running lines, but trying to be in a better position to exit play
Right.
So that you're not running into what I find is a dangerous thing is a lot more contact. The players are much bigger.
Yeah.
And so I know that if I'm running into positions that I'm going to come into contact with players, I'm at risk of injury, and I don't want that. So it's a swinging leg, or it's, you know, a guy trucking it up. He's going to hit you and knock
Yeah.
you over. You know, when I'm 20 or 30, I probably would have bounced up, and that's fine. But I know at 40, that knee or that hit to the leg or to the shoulder, I know that's going to cause damage. So I'm looking
Yeah.
to put myself in a position where I'm out of harm's way, as
Yeah.
it were. So that's what I'm looking for is a change in positioning. So I've got clearer access to exit play,
Sure.
and probably not trying to get in their road as much. I'm not trying to be there early, but just rather follow them in a little more.
Yeah.
And I suppose having refereed a little longer, I know what I'm looking for, so I don't actually have to be there at that time. I can see things a little bit further away.
Righto. So, Mick, bringing you into the conversation then, what about the management of games? You know, the way that you might communicate with players, your patience level, you know, your tone, things like that. Now that you're a little bit more experienced and you know the kind of games that you're refereeing, have you made an adjustment, or you know, is there a need to?
I don't really think there has been a need to adjust there at all. I mean, once you're experienced, you really want to do the same thing, game in and game out. So you don't want to be changing those sort of things. Probably be a little bit more tolerant of back chat, but at the same time, you know, I think it's got to be the same. You're applying the same standard to yourself, to your game. So I don't think it, and I'd hate to think that would change because I'm getting older.
Sure. Okay. Any other kind of positional strategies you might put into play?
Just try to keep the feet moving.
Yeah.
Get away early. Kickoffs. Start to move before the ball's kicked.
So a lot of anticipation then.
Tend to try and run between try line to try line.
Sure.
Get that straight and running so that you can keep an eye on the ball.
I haven't heard Fat Man Track being used yet, but is that an option?
It's staying between the
For over 50s, I think it's.
Okay, sure. We're not quite there yet. That's fine. Good. Wow.
And
Wow.
over 50, 100 kilos.
Okay, those
like
ones.
that. Yeah,
Yep,
there's a couple of
righto.
criteria.
Sure. But so back a line out, front a line out. You know, sides of scrums, or 15-meter channels. Is there anything that you might be considering in a game?
I think it depends on the level of game that you're doing. I think it's important if you're doing junior rugby that your role as an educator, you need to be probably a little bit closer in so that you can communicate with those players that you want to educate or manage through a game. But you've also got to be mindful that you're a bigger body, so little fellas running around you need to try and get in and then get out so that they've got space to do what they need to do.
Yeah.
If you're a bigger body, if you're standing there and they're trying to do plays close to the ruck, and they tend not to go too wide, you're in the road. So you've got to get in, try and manage, and then get out of the way so they can do their thing. When you're doing senior rugby, again, you'd probably have a lot more width in your game there or away from those phases, just because, they are bigger bodies. And again, that contact piece, if they're hitting you, then there's damage done.
For sure.
So,
okay, so what about if we relate this back to, or we take it down to junior rugby, for example, and now we're focusing not necessarily on the physical piece, but the actual communication management of junior rugby? Okay.
I believe, I'd like to approach both the junior and the senior game the same in terms of what I'm saying on the paddock. I don't think it necessarily should change whether it's senior or junior. Specifying what you're needing to do. If you want the junior boy to come back through the gate, just spell that out to them. And that's the same as what I do with the senior. So
your demeanour with younger players?
I enjoy it a lot more, and the kids seem to enjoy it. So they're not for the sheep station. So they tend
the kids aren't.
The kids aren't. Yeah, and they're the ones that I do.
Correct. Right. Yep.
I have a different view. I think that you really got to adapt your game to your different teams that you're
Not
managing.
saying anything's right or wrong here, but we are.
No,
different.
not at all.
Yeah, we're
No.
different.
So
yep.
I think it depends on where you are in your rugby journey. So if you're a starting out referee, I think it's really important that you become black and white to start with. So you know what is right and what is wrong.
Sure.
And you've got those pictures of what that looks like.
Yep.
And then you, as you become more experienced, you can then make a decision as to how you handle those situations. You might go, okay, I know that that's wrong, but I'm going to manage it, and I'll do it this way. So that works particularly well in junior footy because you're there as an educator, and you're there to provide assistance to those boys who are learning and trying to develop their skills.
Righto. So let's keep moving through. There's a few more questions here. Well, I can't get any sort of feedback from people out in the audience, but here in the room, what are some of the triggers? What are some of the triggers for us while we're out there refereeing, especially junior rugby, that might, agitate us, or
Coaches on the sideline.
coaches yelling and screaming, right? So isn't it interesting how the actual on-field is usually pretty well controlled by us? It's the expectations from outside of the field and this perception of, oh, we've got an old boy this week, oh, bloody hell, right over, and they feel that that's okay to give us, a bit of a rough ride during the day, which is a shame. Don't know what we can do about that. Not going to address it here and now. Shane Barr, that's your next one. Moving through, give us a quick idea. And I know Mick's a little bit of an exception to the rule with his regime, but give us a bit of an idea and around what you actually do, Mick, as part of your sort of weekly routine.
So training for me is Monday to Friday. This year it's ride Monday morning, weights Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning swim, Tuesday afternoon weights, Wednesday morning cardio, QRRA training on Wednesday night, swim Thursday.
Do you have a job?
Thursday.
Do you have a really young girlfriend?
Well, I think I've chosen the wrong person here. Sorry about that. Yep, sorry.
And then Friday.
Right.
Well, I do work at home. So.
Oh, okay. Yep. Good. Rightio. Okay, Dan.
Yeah. Well, I don't have it. Look, I work in the city, so and I've got young kids, so my time to train is limited because I'm often chasing them around for their own sport. So it's generally QR training on Wednesdays. Try and get a really good session in there. If I've got games on Saturday, 1 or 2, that's about it. And I'll try and give myself enough time to recover on Sundays. So I'll try not to do too many games on Sundays or none at all, just so I'm mindful of that. For me, rest is important just as much as the workout, and then try and top that up with some weights or other activities, skipping.
Good stuff.
Swimming.
So neither of you are sedentary, right? You're not sitting on your...
Well, I am during the day in
Right,
the office.
but in terms of Monday to Friday and then weekend, you're preparing during the week for a run around on Saturday.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that fair comment? Right. Okay, cool. We're going to keep moving through here, conscious of time. So Dan, level you reached, where are you at now, and do you feel you're being challenged by your association with your appointments?
So the levels that I've reached previously was probably second grade. You've got your Colts 1, GPS first 15, AFC first 15, and then Barber Cup, which is the top level of subbies. Where I'm at now, I'd probably be a level below all of that. So you're probably looking at third grade, Colts 2, second 15, Barber Cup. So that's my level.
Yep.
I can do a good job in those levels there. And I think, where I'd like to be is putting myself in a position where I'm physically ready, that if an opportunity arises in a grade that's higher than that, then I can take that. So, and those opportunities appear all the time because of injuries or late pull-outs or whatever it might be, that, they do appear, so you just got to be patient and hope that comes. So,
yeah, okay. What are some of the other avenues that you could be following, or that we can be following, as members of our association, etc., as we sort of move through our careers?
Or get involved with coaching, obviously, especially in the junior league. work for the working on the committee. Sort of thing.
So you yourself, Mick,
I'm on the committee. I've been on there for a couple of years now. Just under 2 years.
great committee member, by the way. Yeah, pays the bills.
No, that's more.
Oh, that's Maury. Sorry.
Yeah, but refereeing tends to be
Right.
need to do.
And have you considered doing a little bit more coaching as part of the exit strategy,
I had to keep
if there is one?
Yeah, I hope to keep refereeing for a few more years yet, so maybe down the track I'll stop.
Yeah, we'll see. Good man. Excellent. What about yourself, Dan? What are some of the things that you've involved yourselves in this year?
Yeah,
this
so
season?
it wasn't too long into joining the association, I joined the committee. So I was on the committee as treasurer for a good number of years, and actually felt that just I got a lot out of being on the committee because I've got older guys as presidents and vice presidents, and dealing with the issues that come with running a committee was quite valuable from a personal point of view because you can translate that to your work and business life.
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
there was a lot to learn. There's some good mentors in that environment. So, it's a good space to improve, I suppose, business acumen and dealing with conflict off the field as well. That often arises in committees. So that was good. Stepped away from that and then had a couple of years off and then come back in. I've got a young fellow who's interested in rugby, so that's brought me back into the refereeing, and I've just started to develop a program at Villanova School where my son goes to try and give a safe and secure environment for young kids who just want to try refereeing, who may not be rugby built for rugby or have had injuries through rugby and just want to still be involved. So we're looking to try and get about 6 kids a year just to put a reasonable amount of time into them within that school environment. So they're doing lower level games, generally internal games.
Yep.
And giving them half games to just give them a taste, pull them off, give them a little bit of coaching, put them back on, and trying to bring them up to a position where they're going to be capable enough to do clubland games on the weekends.
You're doing that on your own?
No, I'm not doing that. I've got some good support with the school as well. The sports masters there have backed us all the way and have been very encouraging to help us with communication with the kids and making sure that everyone's on the same page. Allowing us to do the appointments as well for the school, just to try and make sure we got the right people in the right spots and giving the right opportunities to those kids who are coming through. And also had a younger association member, George Myers, who's been helping me as well. So he's been running Wednesday morning programs for the term with the boys and working on different aspects of rugby.
Yeah, absolutely.
And together we've been talking about the boys, trying to coach them together on Saturdays, and it's worked really well this year.
Yeah, perfect. All righty, cool. So, as you can see, there's a hell of a lot of avenues that we can pursue, not just on field, but through committee, through education, through development, through mentoring, whatever it might be. I can imagine the collective years of experience we have just in our room here in Brisbane would be into the tens of thousands of years. And it'd be a shame to put that to waste. So, message there is around we shouldn't be waiting to be invited to get involved in these things. It's very much around putting your hand up and getting involved and being proactive around being active members of our associations. A couple of quick questions to sort of finish on. Coaching. What are your expectations around being coached as a referee? What are you hoping to get out of a coaching sort of report or interaction?
In terms of coaching, I don't think I need to have a coach see all that often, but I do want to know how I'm going in terms of allowing advantage to go on, whether I'm missing things, high tackles. The other thing is how am I interacting with the players on the pad?
Sure.
It's general.
So you're at what? Be happy with a couple of reports a season, or?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Fair enough. Dan?
Yeah, almost the same. I enjoy it when a coach comes out. It's another opportunity to try and get feedback on what you're doing. Obviously, the way you think you're refereeing is seen differently by other people. Generally, the coaching is always constructive, so I look forward to it. I don't need pages of stuff. It's only one or two things just to work on.
Yeah.
Tend to just try and use that coaching report to support your own analysis, which you should be doing anyway.
Yeah.
You should be trying to self-assess most of the time, not in high level, I don't think, but just considering different aspects of your game and then sort of try and work on those.
Yeah. So I think it's absolutely important that we don't become that invisible or silent member of our associations. If you haven't had that kind of feedback for a period of time, or been coached or received a coaching report or some kind of connection with those who are in the coaching ranks, once again, don't wait until the end of the season to then put your hand up or to have to complain about it. Get on the front foot. Contact your appointment officers, contact your coaching coordinators, and ask for it. We're making an absolute effort this year from a national level and a strategic plan around making sure everybody gets seen at least twice during the season. And I reckon for the most part, all of us at our ages would be happy with that kind of feedback, at some point during the year, just to make sure that we are, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, and we are performing up to expectations. Last question. Light bulb moment. Have you had one yet around, I've had enough at this level, or I don't really want to do this anymore, or, I think that, I don't think I can continue at this point?
Probably a couple of light bulb moments. I know that one is to actually have time off from refereeing, because it's now become such an all-round sport, year sport. You need to step away and do something else just to keep yourself fresh.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to do that and recognise that needs to happen.
Yeah.
My own refereeing point of view, well, I always knew that, I've got a career in kids, so that was always going to come before refereeing. So I knew where my limitations were, and being aware of the expectations that our referees are now required to meet as far as fitness goals and commitment to games on Saturdays and Sundays and training. I knew that just was never going to meet that. So I know I'm limited with where I can go because I can't commit to all that extra activity. So,
sure. And
obviously my age and you've got young ones coming through are very strong. So I've had some great pathways through. So, we need to keep developing those guys and giving them opportunities. So for me, it's recognising that there's a stream of kids coming through and they need to have the space to breathe and to learn the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Mickey?
Struggling through injuries is this year's sort of I've got to a point now I'm starting to wonder whether I'll keep going.
With the fitness routine that you're currently going through, I'm not surprised, mate. Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. Right, but you're still keen to give it a crack.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
I want to get over them.
I know from my own personal experience, I had a really clear moment a few seasons ago, and my last game of Super Rugby, knowing that it was my last game of Super Rugby anyway, so there was no sort of expectation to keep going again. But I walked off that field knowing that I'm really comfortable with walking away now. I'd had enough, and keeping up with the fitness requirements, the decision-making process, and keeping up with the speed of the game, and all those things started to actually, I was very conscious of performance and potentially, poor performance, etc., based on where I was at now with my age and my involvement in the competition. Plus other factors you mentioned, family and work become part of that as well. I was about to say interference, but you know what I mean. And similar to and similar to me was with the ever evolving influence on the game at that level with technology and things like that. Felt that from a comfort level, I wasn't able to apply my touch on the game as much as I suppose when it comes to community rugby. So really, that was a really clear moment for me. A moment to walk away and say I've had my fun. I suppose for me, and as we were talking about earlier, for me the thing was also around moving down, moving from that area, from that space of Super Rugby, and then understanding that moving from there, no point from me personally hanging around in a Premier grade level or higher or whatever it might be, NRC, whatever it is, because why? You know what I mean? Why? I've had my fun, I've had my turn there, and I don't want to be blocking clear, as you said, development pathways and opportunities for guys coming through the system. So that one stings. I suppose as referees, those ones sting around going, well, I know I'm still capable, and I know I can do those, and I don't want to let it go. But the adage, and this is one of the really good messages, clear messages that Ron Mansell mentions in his paper was around, when we sit back and we think about why do we still do it? Why do we still referee? And if our answer is, because I want to give back to the game, well, I suppose, there's probably a lot of other reasons there as well, around my ego, my pride, I can still do this, and et cetera, et cetera. And I reckon that, having observed performances over recent times or previous, recent years, I suppose, there's a few of us who should probably stop giving. Stop giving, yeah. But anyway, that's another topic. Stop sharing. Anyway, okay. So, gentlemen, I'd like to thank you both for their little participation. Thank you so much for your brutal honesty and being upfront with me. Thanks so much, and for the audience as well. So we'll just quickly move off, shove off, and we'll finish off with a couple of other things. Righto. So only a few more minutes to go. This will be a short one tonight because I'm sure it's well past the vast majority in this room anyway, their bedtime. There's a lot of yawns in the room there and people dying for a cup of tea and off to bed. So I suppose just in summary of what we've discussed here tonight, personally, I think there's three really clear key performance indicators for us in our generations to be, actively staying in the game and and being prepared to do so. And they are quite different. The key performance indicators are quite different to what you would expect for a younger development referee. Their key performance indicators all around their fitness profile, their decision-making ability, their interpersonal skills, all of those things. For us, I suppose it comes down to three indicators. Firstly, I suppose this keeps clinking. Firstly, safety. Everybody involved in the game expects us as referees to officiate the game with the players' welfare as our number one priority. So, safety. This switched off again, Nick. The safety, of course, comes from our understanding of and our currency around game management guidelines. Are we up to date? Are we up to speed? Do we keep that, at the top of our head every time we go out on the field on the weekend? Are we across the sanctioning of foul play? Are we following up on poor discipline, dealing with foul play as it arises? The other one for us, I think, to think about is our capability. Are you actually physically capable of running out on the ground this weekend? I reckon too often we feel that there is a requirement for us to turn up on the weekend, and we are carrying an injury. We haven't had a great week of preparation. We've been dragged over the coals with work at home or wherever it might be, and we're probably not in the best state of mind or the best physical state to referee the game. Something for us really to think about, because the longer we drag on with a niggling injury, the more serious it becomes and the harder it is for us to recover from those injuries. Just having a quick look at my notes here to finish up. There's an old adage here I think old school kind of mentality around if you can't keep up with the game, well, we keep the game close to us. And I think modern approach would be a little bit different nowadays. You know, I think expectations from sidelines are more around, you know, being up with the game, being physically capable of getting through that game and delivering at the level of the game that you're doing. Okay, so the last one I think I really want to touch on here, probably a sore point, but one that I think is really important, and that is currency. Currency in our accreditations. Okay, so it's actually quite frightening when we, as sort of the ones that go through our accreditation portals and all that type of stuff, and we find that a large number of, not just from our cohort, but a large number of our referees let their accreditations lapse. Currency is so important. I really, really encourage you all that if a few hands going up here in the room, no pointing, no fingers, of course. It is so important that we remain current. Obviously, from a governance perspective and a safety and insurance level, and for our own peace of mind, you know, some of the battles we've faced from an administration level as referees who have held higher accreditations now potentially only able to reaccredit on a lower level, so a level 2 going down to a level 1. Honestly, the accreditation is simply a piece of paper, all right? The fact that you have all of this experience will simply put you in good stead to referee the games that you are doing. Unfortunately, the programs as they run, if you are looking to reaccredit an existing or a lapse, I should say, level 2 accreditation, but you are no longer refereeing at that level, don't worry about it, okay? Don't worry about it. It's important to remain current for where you are at. Unfortunately, accreditations are not like a life membership, so we don't get them and hang on to them for life. It is important for us to understand that and make sure that we are, ticking those boxes. Okay. Safety, capability, currency. I don't really have that much more to add to. Are there any comments from this room to add before we close off? No? They've all gone to sleep, by the way. They've all gone to sleep. Anyway, look, guys, thank you so much for giving up your time once again on a Wednesday night. This will wrap up these webinars for the season so far. Maybe up until tonight, they've been excellent, and we've all got a hell of a lot out of them so far. So, listen, please, by all means, throw some feedback at us. Our objective, of course, is always to improve and to make these, much better for all of us, and obviously looking to do a lot more next year. So once again, thank you very much for your time tonight, and we look forward to catching up with you all soon, wherever you may be. All the best. Thank you.